Hi guys, quick update here for YouTube, 28th of August, Monday 2023. So not financial advice, educational purposes. Next Monday the market's closed. Today it is open. Bitcoin, we've been very cautious, very bearish on this for quite some time here, and obviously we've now got the down move. Now there's not much to say other than this current correction seems to be a correction triangle, probably a WXY, a bear flag. So everyone's probably got the same count by now, which is that it's some kind of A, B, or WX into a Y. That does look like 5 waves. I suppose it could be over here. It could just rally up out of it. I don't see that happening. I'm still quite bearish, cautious on the S&P, and we'll go over that in a minute. It's doing exactly what we said on the last video, but what makes the most amount of sense is one more push down. Now, there is a gap at 20,000. I don't think it goes down that low, because if it goes down that low, then this can't be the count, because that would be a very, very large C. I suppose it still works, but it would be a little bit odd and not in keeping with what we think the S&P is going to do. I mean, the 1.618 is 21.9. So for it to get to 20k in a C wave extension, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then frankly, you'd have to call this the A wave, and then this is just part A of a larger B wave. And then we're going to end up doing this, and then we're going to do this. So I don't think it gets down to the gap. I think the most important level here is somewhere between, I'd say about 23.5k and this low here, which is around 25k. And we're currently at 26. So another, I mean, what is that? 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10%. And then we need some evidence of a turn, which currently we do not have. The trend is very clearly down, but some kind of reversal, ideally reclaiming this level here. So goes underneath, gets everyone nice and bearish. If it reclaims, suddenly we have a much, much larger move in our hands, because we believe this is some kind of W or A, that's the entire X or B, and then we're going to rally right into the halving. Okay, so it's a great time to join the group here. We've got our eyes on quite a few different coins. Obviously, as of time of doing video, we're not quite ready yet, but we're very close, I think, to a very nice rally going into the end of this year, so Q4 and Q1 of next year, right into the halving, which is somewhere around here in April/May of 24. And we still have unrecognized or unrealized targets around 44k. Okay, so we've mentioned many times, when we call the top in the middle of all of this high is not going to get taken out. However, there is one more push up. Okay, so I think we need to go lower to go higher, and we're very close to a turn. It's kind of in keeping with my S&P thesis, which is still not quite ready to rally up out of here. We called for a multi-week, multi-month correction at the start of August, and we've got that. That's 1,000% move in weekly put options minimum. Now, is it gonna rally up out of it? I don't think so. This to me looks like an A wave that's been built in here, and now we're just churning out some kind of complex B wave or X wave, and then we're gonna have one more push down. Okay, and a retest probably of the line, the trend line that is, coming all the way back from, well, basically the crash lows of March 2020. Let's just iron and clean that up a little bit. Let's get it right through this line here. Well, let's assume we go straight down from here, which obviously is not possible. That's coming in at, 4,009 on the SPX, that is. On the SPY, obviously, you just divide by 10. 416. So we're not done, right? We're nowhere near done. There's also a few cash gaps on the SPX. We've still not filled the ES gap, which we said we were going to go for. And also there's a fib there, and there's a 200-day moving average, which is lurking around. And we know a lot of people trade off this, right? So it would make sense for this market to make all-time new highs, to do a quick move down, tag the 200, tag the trend line, and then we've got the X wave in. Yeah. Now, of course, that could just be a wave, right? All of that could just be a complex A wave. Then we do a B, then we do a C, and really the X is here. However, that C wave could truncate, right? So in terms of price, that A wave might be the low. Let me just bring this out a little bit, okay? So whilst the A wave technically is not the end of the correction, it could be the lowest price that the correction gets to. Hopefully that makes sense. Because obviously this C wave is higher than here. Although technically that's all part of the correction. So something like this may actually play out, where this next move down might actually be the low for the entire correction, and then we go higher, then we go lower again, but it may truncate. I have a feeling something like this is going to play out. Something like that. That forms the X wave, and the next thing you know, we're rallying towards all-time new highs. New highs before the end of the year are still possible here. I mean, we're cutting it pretty close here. We're going to have to catch a bid next 4 to 6 weeks. So far, there's no evidence of this market wanting to turn higher, but a lot can change between now and the end of the year. So we could still rally up out of here. And then, as we've said, we think it's an ending diagonal because it's the only count which now makes sense. Which has been making sense for quite some time now, right? Is that is the A, that's the B in, this is the WXYC. Then we're going to do another one of these, D. Then we're going to do an E, throw over, FOMO, and then we're going to crash 90%. So the real crash is not another couple of years away. But that appears to be how it's going to end. It's an ending diagonal, which kind of makes sense with an extended wave 5 cycle and super cycle and primary. Everything's getting extended in its wave 5. Relative to what's happened the last 100, 200 years, depending on how far you want to go back. I mean, I suppose it could be a grand super cycle 4, but it could also be a sub-millennium crash. So I see a very large crash coming here, as we've been speaking about, in the next couple of years. I'm not convinced we're there yet. I'm not convinced it's happening right now, right? So, there's still, more time here. A couple of years at least. Obviously, we're getting as closer to it as we've ever been. So just to recap then, we're not thinking Michael Burry's right with his $1.6 billion short. We're not convinced of this. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. However, the correction needs to go out a little bit more. So that's it really, short and sweet. So if you want to join the group, everything's there. Obviously, we cover everything in a lot more detail there. We share various objective evidence to prove where the market is actually going. I can't give any of that away. But that's the current situation. SPX needs to correct more, both horizontally and vertically, as in down. And Bitcoin, I don't think it's quite ready yet, although I think the next big low, the next big panic low, which may very well happen with this long weekend we have coming up in the US, as very normal around the Memorial Day bank holiday weekend to get a big pump or a big panic sell-off because the liquidity is not really there. And this has been going sideways for quite some time, which means, you can't really call that the 3 isn't here. I suppose you could just about, but another couple more days, if it hasn't broken down, you can't really call that a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off just the 3, because it's gone on for too long. The wave 2 and this 3. For those who are following what I'm saying here, I'm talking about the minute count within this wave 3. It only went on for a couple of days. We've gone sideways in the wave 4 for quite some time, so it doesn't have the right look. Which means more than likely that's the 1, that's the 2, that's the 3, that's the 4, then that's the 5. Yes, everyone has the same count, which is quite worrying really. Makes me think we might even go to the gap. I just don't see the gap getting filled though. I just don't see the gap getting filled. So everything comes down to what happens on the next big dump. Is that the end of the correction? Because if that's the end of the correction and we get some real panic, and we get some bearish headlines like Bitcoin breaks 25k. Where's that headline? We haven't seen the headline because it's not happened yet. And it makes a 6-month low. Where is that headline? We've not seen it because it's not happened yet. So get some real bearish headlines, none of which are, as of right now, time of doing video, have occurred. Get somewhere down here. I'd say, let's just forget about the gap for 1 second. I'd say 23.8 to around, I'd say 25. I think 25 has to break. So you got a $2,000 range there. If this is the W and then that is the completion of the X, well then we can only go higher. And of course we have unrealized targets at 44,000. So you can just Obviously, it's not going to follow the exact same, kind of, wave count, but you get the point, right? So you can see us rallying straight into the halving, can't you? Right, the halving being here somewhere in April. I don't think we're going to get a post-halving pump like we usually do. This cycle, this current bear market that we're in is very different, as we have been explaining for quite some time. The market topped 1.5 years ago. We're in a very, very long, complicated mess, and we have to wait for the S&P for the next couple of years. Bitcoin not going to take out 69k anytime soon. It's not to say there's not money to be made there. Obviously there is. We caught every single coin move here, from AGIX to all the AI coins to Solana, right? We caught everything. So there's plenty of money to be made if you're in the right coins. But Bitcoin specifically, I don't see it doubling in price, let's say, from here to... Well, let me take that back. I don't see it trebling in price. I suppose a double would get you to around, 50k is possible, but the target which I have is 44k. Yeah. So, and that kind of fits with my thesis that eventually the S&P, although it's not ready yet, is gonna join in eventually, right? But obviously, a day is a very long time in the stock market. It's not quite ready to pump, and there is still this ongoing, albeit somewhat disjointed correlation, but it is still there, that Bitcoin is a liquidity marker of sorts, and it's going to take us higher. It's going to drag the S&P higher, right? So that makes the most amount of sense. Usually Bitcoin's going to bottom first, though, which also makes me cautious on this move in the S&P. It's not a move immediately to 4,600. It just can't happen. Bitcoin usually acts first. Notice Bitcoin topped here in July. This topped about a couple of weeks later, right? So these are the kind of, what do you call them? Divergences and relationships that you need to know of, and that's what we discuss in the group twice a week. So if you like what we're doing here, come on, join the group. We've got educational courses there too, if you want to check it out. But long story short, let's keep it under 15 minutes here. I think Bitcoin, the next big panic low sell-off, which may very well happen this week. If not, it'll be very soon. Next couple of weeks, I think is buyable if we get the right pattern setting up, right? It has to sell off, has to get very bearish, and then it has to immediately reclaim. We don't want it hanging around here for too long, below a level, right? If you break a key level and you hang around for too long, it implies bearishness, to me anyway, and then that could imply a move down. If it hangs around for a couple of days, then reclaims, suddenly that's the X wave in. And that's 6 months of cause. And as we've said on the first YouTube video, going back 5.5 years, the very first thing that we said, the longer something goes sideways, the bigger the move. So we could potentially get it's not a double, is it? But it's very close to a double. Let's say it bottoms out at 23,800 or something on Coinbase. If it goes to 44,000, maybe even 50,000 as per Plan B's stock to flow model. Well, let's do 44. That's an 85% move over the next 6 months, right? Obviously, October, November, December, January, February, March, right into the halving. So those are the kind of gains you have to now be happy with. Bitcoin used to make 85% in a day, or it felt like a day. If we get to 50k, great. I don't see 69k itself getting taken out, but I think we can get pretty damn close. So that's the current setup here. Like I said, if you want to join the group, you can have a look. That's my current thesis. Everyone's got the same count, which worries me a little bit. Is there anything bearish? I don't see anything bearish though, like uber bearish, like below the gap. I don't see this gap. I just don't see it getting filled, because if that doesn't have the right look, then you'd have to say this is the A. And to count this as the A, it's very, very strange. It's a real mess. You'd have to count that as 5 into there, as a W, then into an X, and then into a Y. And it can't be a 535. So it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, because that can't be a W, because it looks like a 5 waves. So it just doesn't work at all, right? You're better off calling this the A. For many reasons, this doesn't work as a top. Plus, this doesn't even look like a real impulse. This looks like a wave X. Anything that's too clean is usually dirty. Anything that's too vertical in the stock market is usually an X wave. So if you work backwards, that must be the X. That must be the W, which means this is the larger W. Yeah, hopefully people are following me here. That's a smaller degree W, that's the X, and then that's the Y. Of course, it could also be a B wave, right? Okay, we're just getting into Elliott wave theory here, probably confusing everyone. But I mean, technically, that could also be a WXY. But but in which case it's going to break down in 3 and not 5. But it's kind of there. It's kind of there, and surely we'd have to run these stops. I'm not really liking this low here that occurred on the 13th of June. So let's see. 23,800 is the lowest I think it's going to go. I'm not convinced we're going to get to the gap, and then 25k as a minimum. So we're not really asking for much. Everyone's got the same count now, but has to do this, stabilize, and then immediately reclaim and show us some real impulsive green volume and candles coming in, large range candles. Then we know we've got it for the next move up, and obviously the ultimate target being 44k before the halving, which means your favorite altcoin, if you're in the right one, is gonna possibly 10x if you're in the right one, and that's obviously what we do in the group. So very complicated mess. I think it proves it's not a real bull market at all. It's a very complex, long-winded bear market which is getting dragged out because the S&P is in an ending diagonal, and then that's it really. Not really much to update. Yeah, I mean, as you can see, that's not really doing much, is it? So, I mean, really, what should happen is Michael Burry should be right. What should happen is this. This should happen, and it should go towards 666, but it's not going to, is it? Although, in another couple of years, that may not necessarily be the case.